Most creepy story of Demon City cityscape at dusk. The city that should not be. Welcome if you dare. You are about to hear a tale that should never have been told, a story from the deepest, darkest corners of the world. A place where nightmares take shape and where the very air is thick with terror. If you have any sense of safety, I suggest you stop now. But if you choose to continue, if you choose to press on into this forbidden nightmare, then welcome to the Demon City. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button. You will want to come back to understand this. You might even need to. The city, once vibrant, alive with the hum of daily life, now lies in an eternal shroud of darkness, cursed by a presence that never sleeps. Those who entered never returned, and the ones who were left behind, they never stopped searching for answers. But some things should never be uncovered. It all started with the map. It had been buried under years of dust in an old library. The type of library you'd expect to find only if you were looking for things that should not be found. A map, barely more than a tattered scrap of paper with markings that made no sense. Symbols that twisted in on themselves as if they were written by hands that had long been lost to time. People would have overlooked it if it weren't for the whispers. But those who heard them, they did not leave the library either. A single name was scrawled on the map. The Demon City. At first, it sounded like a legend, a horrifying myth meant to scare children into behaving. But as those curious enough to chase the mystery dug deeper, they found something far worse than folklore. The Demon City was not a city that had been forgotten. It was never meant to be found. The closer they got, the darker it became. One by one, people disappeared, leaving only hollow whispers behind them. The shadows around the city's edges grew taller, stretching impossibly high, and the air grew colder as though the very fabric of reality itself was slowly unraveling. Some still dared to enter. The city stood still, untouched by time, its twisted spires towering above broken streets where not a single living soul was ever seen. The buildings stood like rotting giants, their windows staring down into the emptiness. Those who ventured into the heart of the city found themselves drawn to an ancient, crumbling cathedral, where an evil older than the city itself slept. But it was never truly asleep. Inside that cathedral, whispers of a force far older than humanity spoke, voices that no man or woman should have ever heard, a language that distorted the air and made their minds spin. And when they emerged, they were not the same. They were never the same again. They could see things in the shadows, in the corners of their eyes, things that weren't really there but weren't not there either. They could hear the whispers, distant but clear, always just beyond reach. And worse still, they could feel it, the presence watching, waiting. One person who had entered returned with eyes wide with fear. He had seen it, a twisted figure, its form ever-changing like the dark between the stars. But it had a face, and once you saw that face you could never forget it. And now you've heard about it too. Did you feel it? That sensation of something brushing past you in the corner of your eye? The cold air creeping down your spine? That sudden tightening in your chest? It's here now. It knows you're listening. And once you've heard it, once you've felt its presence, you become part of the curse. It watches. But there's more. Much more. You haven't even begun to understand it. In the next chapter, you'll feel it, something far worse than what you could possibly imagine. Something that has been waiting for you. Stay tuned. The city knows your name. If you've made it this far, there's no turning back. The city, the darkness, it's watching you now. You've heard its whispers, felt its presence, and now you're a part of it. But trust me, you have no idea how deep the horror runs. This isn't just a tale you hear and forget. No, it lingers. It follows. It haunts. The map was only the beginning. Those who entered the Demon City believed they were uncovering the truth. But the truth, as they would soon learn, was far worse than anything they could have imagined. The city wasn't abandoned. It was alive, alive with an unspeakable evil that had waited centuries for someone foolish enough to disturb it. As soon as you step foot inside, something changes. You don't feel it immediately, but it's there, beneath your skin and your thoughts. The air grows heavy, each breath thicker than the last, until even walking becomes a struggle. It's as if the ground itself resists you, unwilling to let you leave. The further you go, the stronger it becomes. You can't escape it. The buildings aren't just ruins. They're prisons, each one a tomb for those trapped inside. The longer you linger in the city, the more the walls seem to shift, closing in, bending, reshaping. It's not just your eyes playing tricks on you, it's something worse. It's alive. And then you hear it. A distant scream, not human but filled with desperation. The kind of scream that echoes through the very marrow of your bones. You turn to look, but there's nothing. Nothing but the silent shadows stretching out before you, wrapping around you like a shroud. That's when you realize, the city doesn't just hold you in place. It consumes. It feeds on the fear, the regret, the despair. Every footstep you take adds to the weight, every thought becomes a tether, and every breath pulls you deeper into its grasp. And there's something worse. Something far worse than the city itself. The demon stalks you. Not from the shadows. No. It's right in front of you, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But it's not like any demon you've heard of. It's not the horned, fiery creature from tales meant to scare children. This demon, this entity, is older, more twisted. It doesn't just haunt. It twists minds, warps souls, and devours everything that makes you human. The voice didn't come from outside. It didn't come from the walls. It came from inside her head, but it wasn't hers. And it wasn't alone. There were others. Countless voices, low and echoing, a cacophony of whispers that circled her, suffocated her. She could feel them moving in, crowding her thoughts, wrapping around her sanity. Jenna, come to us. She tried to scream, but the sound lodged itself in her throat. Her body was no longer hers. It felt like something was inside her, pushing, pulling, bending her, forcing her to step away from the window to move toward the door. Her legs moved against her will, as if they had a mind of their own, carrying her down the dark hall toward the front door. And as she reached for the handle, she saw it. The figure, standing in the darkness at the end of the hallway. It was tall, impossibly tall, its limbs stretching far beyond what a human body could withstand. The void where its face should have been was still empty, but this time, it wasn't alone. Around it, dozens of shadows danced in the periphery, faces all lost, all waiting. They whispered in a language she couldn't understand, their mouths frozen in silent screams. You shouldn't have come back, Jenna. The figure's voice was a whisper, but it felt like it was roaring inside her skull. She staggered backward, terror seizing her chest. The figure started to move, its limbs stretching and contorting unnaturally, as though it was not bound by the laws of physics. The darkness around it grew thicker, darker, until it seemed to swallow everything, the light, the air, her very breath. She wanted to run, to escape, but it was as though the world itself had turned against her, trapping her in this nightmare. She stumbled backward, her eyes darting for a way out, but there was no way out. No escape. Not anymore. And then, just as her heart was about to explode from fear, it spoke again. You are already here. The words echoed in her mind, in her soul. They were alive. They saw her. Knew her. Suddenly, she was no longer in her apartment. She was standing in the middle of the demon street again, the cold pavement beneath her feet, the same oppressive silence closing in from all sides. But now there was nowhere to run. The street was alive. It pulsed with an ancient evil that had been waiting for her. And it was not just the street. It was her. The figure was there again, standing in the shadows, but now it was smiling, grinning, its empty void of a face shifting, becoming something darker, something alive. You heard the whispers, didn't you? It asked. Now you'll be one of us. Forever. The ground beneath her cracked, opening wide to reveal the same tendrils from before, creeping up like fingers, pulling her down, dragging her toward the depths of the street. The last thing Jenna saw before she was consumed by the darkness was her own reflection, staring back at her from the cracked pavement. But it wasn't her. It was the figure, its empty eyes staring directly into her soul. And then there was nothing. The demon street doesn't let go. Once it claims you, you are part of it. And now you are part of it too. The whispers will follow you as they followed Jenna. The shadows will move when you're not looking. And when you hear the name whispered in your ear, when you feel the eyes on your back, you'll know. Knows you. It is aware of you. And there's no escape. Not anymore. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe.